In recent weeks, Japan has found itself caught in a tightening vice between two superpowers, and the tension has erupted with unusual clarity. Prime Minister Takaichi's landmark statement on November 7 that a Taiwan conflict could become a survival-threatening situation for Japan ignited fierce backlash from Beijing, leading to diplomatic protests, canceled cultural events, and a chilling wave of anti-Japan sentiment across China. Yet just as Tokyo hoped for steady support from Washington, another shock arrived: reports that President Donald Trump personally urged Takaichi to avoid provoking China, only hours after speaking with Xi Jinping. This unexpected shift, reinforced by Trump's startling public claim that many allies are not friends, has revived memories of the historic Nixon shock, when the United States opened to China without informing Japan. Today, as U.S. China relations evolve to fit each leader's political needs, Japan faces a strategic dilemma more delicate than any in recent decades. In this analysis, we will unpack how these events unfolded, why the reactions in Beijing and Washington matter, and what they reveal about the increasingly unpredictable geometry of power in East Asia. The diplomatic crisis that unfolded after Prime Minister Takaichi's November 7 statement did not emerge from thin air. It was the result of long-building tensions, accumulated distrust, and a shifting balance of power across the Indo-Pacific. But it was also, in many ways, the product of timing. The moment Takaichi declared that a military intervention by China against Taiwan could constitute a survival-threatening situation for Japan, a legal category that could justify the use of Japan's self-defense forces, she crossed a threshold no previous Japanese prime minister had dared to cross publicly. For Japan, it was a long overdue recognition of geographic reality. For China, it was treated as a direct challenge to what Beijing calls the core of the core interests. Beijing's reaction was not only swift but unusually aggressive. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned the remarks with strong dissatisfaction and firm opposition, but the escalation rapidly moved beyond formal statements. A Chinese consul in Osaka went so far as to post a violent and deeply inappropriate comment on social media, declaring that Takaichi's dirty head should be cut off without hesitation. Although such language does not reflect official diplomatic protocol, it revealed the emotional temperature inside parts of China's political environment, and the degree to which Taiwan issues now trigger almost visceral nationalist responses. Tokyo's diplomats scrambled to contain the damage. The Foreign Ministry dispatched Asia-Pacific Bureau Director Masaki Kanai to Beijing, hoping to stabilize the situation. Yet even in the small details, such as the Chinese official photographed speaking with his hands in his pockets while Kanai stood with a lowered gaze, the symbolism was impossible to ignore. China wanted to show that it held the upper hand. The repercussions spread rapidly. Chinese authorities and state-influenced media signaled that citizens should avoid traveling to Japan. Tourism collapsed almost overnight. Exchange programs were suspended, business events postponed, and even Japanese cultural performances, including a planned concert by pop icon Ayumi Hamasaki, were canceled. This was not merely diplomatic pressure, it was a coordinated use of social, economic, and cultural levers to signal Beijing's displeasure. But to understand why China reacted with such intensity, one must look not only at the Taiwan issue itself but also at the events leading up to the crisis. Beijing had already been wary of Takaichi's new administration. In a move widely interpreted as symbolic disapproval, Chinese President Xi Jinping did not send a traditional congratulatory message upon her inauguration. And yet, at the November APEC summit in South Korea, China offered Japan what Beijing perceived as a generous gesture, a full bilateral summit, providing Takaichi with a valuable early diplomatic achievement. Tokyo saw the summit as a success. Beijing saw it as extending an olive branch. What happened next, however, disrupted this carefully managed sequence. After the Japan-China summit, Takaichi held a highly publicized meeting at the same APEC venue with Taiwan's representative Lin Hsine. She then posted the photograph on social media. Even more irritating for Beijing was the Prime Minister's earlier decision to release a candid-style photo of Xi Jinping wearing a relaxed smile, instead of China's preferred official image in which he maintained a stern expression. The two photo incidents placed Taiwan and China visually side by side in Japanese political messaging, an arrangement Beijing finds intolerable. The true magnitude of Japan's predicament became clearer not in Tokyo or Beijing, but in Washington, specifically during Donald Trump's interview on Fox News with conservative host Laura Ingraham on November 10. What should have been a friendly, predictable discussion turned into a revealing moment that exposed deep fractures within American political thinking and raised uncomfortable questions for U.S. allies, especially Japan. Laura Ingraham, a longtime supporter of the Make America Great Again, MAGA, movement, approached the interview with a clear goal: to reaffirm Trump's alignment with the tough-on-China stance favored by his most loyal base. She highlighted China's extreme comments about Prime Minister Takaichi, including the shocking social media post by the Chinese consul advocating her beheading, and framed her question in a way that seemed to invite a forceful, pro-alliance response. It was an opportunity for Trump to declare that America stands firmly with Japan against intimidation. Yet Trump's answer was startlingly different. Rather than condemn China or support a fellow Democratic leader, he calmly replied, "Many of our allies are not friends, Laura. Allies have taken advantage of us in trade even more than China." In a single sentence, he reframed the entire conversation. The issue was no longer China's aggression or Japan's security concerns, it was America's sense of grievance toward its own allies. This was not an accidental remark. It reflected a worldview that has shaped Trump's politics for years: alliances are transactional, and loyalty is less important than leverage. Trump followed up by emphasizing that he enjoyed a very good relationship with Xi Jinping, underscoring a message that quietly echoed the tone of his earlier call with the Chinese leader on November 25, the same call after which he reportedly warned Takaichi not to escalate tensions over Taiwan. For Japanese officials watching from Washington or Tokyo, the pattern was impossible to miss. China had voiced outrage at Japan. Japan turned to the United States for support. The United States, instead of tightening ranks with Japan, signaled caution and even sympathy toward Beijing's sensitivities. The comparison many analysts drew was the Nixon shock of 1971, when the United States secretly worked to normalize relations with China without informing Japan until the last minute. But today's situation carries a new dimension. This is not a grand strategic realignment orchestrated by diplomatic elites. It is a shifting political calculation shaped by Trump's domestic priorities, his rapport with Xi, and the internal tensions between MAGA ideology and the practical constraints of governing. In the same Fox News interview, this tension played out repeatedly. Ingraham questioned Trump on topics where the MAGA base expects strong, uncompromising stances: reducing foreign students, restricting immigration, confronting China's influence. Yet Trump's answers often diverged. He defended Chinese students as economically necessary, dismissed concerns about the cost of living by claiming they were democratic fraud, and argued that the United States still needed talented foreign workers, contradicting the strict anti-immigration message popular among his core supporters. This created the impression that Trump was no longer fully aligned with the movement that helped elevate him, and that his political calculations were increasingly personal rather than ideological. The remark, "MAGA is my idea, no one understands it better than I do," only reinforced the sense that Trump sees himself as the ultimate arbitrator of what the movement stands for, even if that means shifting positions unpredictably. For Japan, this unpredictability is the heart of the strategic challenge. For decades, Japanese foreign policy has relied on one bedrock assumption: that the United States, regardless of administration, would ultimately prioritize its alliances over transactional interests. Even when disagreements occurred, the alliance structure remained solid because it was anchored in bipartisan consensus. But under Trump, and potentially again in the future, that assumption no longer holds with the same reliability. This does not mean America will abandon Japan. The U.S. Japan alliance remains central to American military strategy in Asia. But it does mean that Tokyo cannot assume automatic alignment, especially on issues that intersect with U.S. China economic negotiations or the political imperatives of an American president navigating a polarized domestic landscape. This is why the November 25 phone call mattered so deeply. At a critical moment when Japan expected moral support and diplomatic solidarity, it instead received caution, while China, only hours earlier, received understanding. For many in Tokyo, This was a quiet but unmistakable warning. The United States could shift its position if its interests demand it, even if that creates discomfort for its closest allies. Japan's challenge is not merely to manage China's anger, but to navigate an era in which American politics itself has become a moving target. The two superpowers surrounding Japan, one geographically, one strategically, are both driven by leaders whose decisions can shift rapidly based on internal priorities. Beijing reacts through nationalism and strategic messaging. Washington reacts through election cycles and personal political interests. For a resource-poor island nation situated between these giants, the path forward requires not confrontation but calibration. Japan must maintain firm principles while ensuring its diplomacy remains flexible. It must strengthen its self-defense capabilities without provoking unnecessary crises. And perhaps most importantly, it must cultivate the ability to operate independently when great power politics begin to overshadow alliance expectations. In this new reality, Japan's most valuable skill will not be choosing sides, but navigating between them with precision.